Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the We Build Families podcast. I am your host, Pastor B. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about having an attitude of gratitude. Of course, this particular podcast, we have created a space where Christians can talk about everyday issues that we may not have the opportunity or space to talk about in church. We also like to provide godly solutions and practical applications to everyday life issues as well. All right. So, again, today's episode, we are going to be talking about having an attitude of gratitude. So, it's been over a year since the coronavirus pandemic began. This episode will be the last week of March whenever it posts. And so dealing with Corona and the virus and all of the aftermath of the virus, it's been a really, really long year, 12 months. And so I just kind of wanted to give my areas of thankfulness, the things that I've experienced, and the people who have helped me along the way. So I want to first start with my family. So my wife Melissa, we've been married 15 years, and it'll be 16 in a couple of weeks, actually about 8 weeks from now. And so I've been really, really blessed to have her by my side all of these years. You know, we were high school sweethearts back in the 99, 2000, right? Trying to figure out life. And so I proposed to her in 2004. Um, I just knew that I wanted to be married to her, that I wanted to experience life with her. And, you know, the personal situation that I was dealing with at the time, didn't scare her away. And so she stuck with me through that process. And I, pretty much told myself that if she can stick with me through this, then, there's nothing else that life would throw our way that we couldn't handle together. So, from that day even till today, she's been my biggest supporter and cheerleader all of these years. We've both grown together, made mistakes together, and I'm just grateful to have her by my side during this last year, because we were fortunate that we didn't catch COVID ourselves, but we did have a couple of scares. Our jobs were continuous throughout the pandemic and the ongoing pandemic. However, just the stress of 2020 was a lot. And so I'm grateful that God allowed me to have someone to go through that year with, because there were plenty of times where I didn't understand why things were happening. I didn't understand how to really make it, during the coronavirus. You had so many people who lost their lives, and I had family members who passed as well. So never discount the support of your family if you're married. Um, Spouses are supposed to be emotional support sometimes, and physical support. Your presence matters. And so I am just really, really grateful that I was able to experience that with my wife, because God has kept us, and He was really, really good to us in 2020. It wasn't all bad, but the lows were definitely ones that we were better together going through that than individually separated. So again, kudos to my wife. Thank you again for all that you have done and are doing for our family. And so the other thing that I thank God for is my family. So I've been away from my family since 2009. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, and so all of my family lives there. And so this pandemic really has been a blessing, because it's allowed me to have more regular contact with my mom and dad and my sisters. Um, and so, there were periods of time prior to this year where mentally I'd separated myself from my home and from my family. And I believe it was because I was trying to create my own identity, kind of make my own mark, separate from my hometown. And so, what I discovered though was that I really, really miss my family, even though I was comfortable, being away from them. Just the support, the having someone close to you, besides my wife, it was really, really heavy on my heart that I couldn't go home as much as I wanted to. And so, with this pandemic, one of the blessings is through Zoom and other virtual platforms, I was able to, see my family, check up on them. We've had game nights, we've had just great conversations. And so, God has been able to, reignite the passion and love, and the community for my family. And so, that's one of the blessings of 2021 and this pandemic that we are still going through, is that we were able to use new technologies to stay closer and keep in touch with our families. And so I hope that none of us took that for granted, especially with all of the different things that happens to families who are separated. God really used this time to bring not just my family together, but other families together as well. So their love and their support for me has never ever wavered. And this year or these last 12 months or so, I've branched out to do things like podcasting and being more visible on social media and YouTube and things like that. And like my sister and my mom and dad have been consistent supporters from the very, very beginning. And so, that's always encouraging. It's always good to know that you have people who have your back and who are rooting for you. And so I am truly, truly grateful for my family. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we've been in Louisiana since 2009. And so me and my wife are the only, blood relatives that we have with each other. And so, in our process of establishing our own identity, we still needed friends, right? We still needed a community of people who we could glean from and just have fun with, right? Have some type of family home away from home. And so I am really, really grateful for my church family, for a couple of people who really became our family here in Shreveport. Community is very, very important. Um, we were never ever designed to live life alone, and I think I've learned that more leaving my hometown actually. Because many times you want to, strike out and do things on your own, but we were never ever designed to live life alone. Like we need one another. We need people who can pour into us, and then we need people available for us to pour into them. And so, my church family has been just that over these last 11 years. Is that I've been able to have a second and third and fourth families here in Shreveport due to just connections and um, random meetups, right? We had a whole family adopt us just because I decided to go to school and get an associate's degree, right? I was able to meet an entire family just based on that, right? So um, I'm grateful for godly connections. There hasn't really been a connection here in Shreveport that God has led me to that didn't benefit me in one way or another. So be prayerful for godly connections. If you feel like you are alone, that you're by yourself, pray that God sends the right people, right? My pastor even said today that we should pray for um, discernment so that we can be able to tell if the person entering my life, entering my circle, is one of benefit or one of um, destruction, right? If they're trying to bring down everything that I'm building. So community is so key, and I'm grateful for the people, the brothers and sisters that God has allowed me to connect with, because anytime that we go through trauma, anytime that we go through tough times, many times we don't always know what to say, we don't always know if what we are feeling is right. We need people that we can, be vulnerable with, that we can be honest to, right? And so that's the important part of community. And then lastly, I just want to thank God for Him being good. I mentioned earlier that because of the jobs that we were able to get here in Shreveport, they were considered essential, right? So God allowed us to maintain our employment during 2020 and the beginning of 2021. But also, God has been able to just keep us and giving us opportunities to give back as well. That's the one great thing about God and the charge that He gives us, right? He wants us to not ask to be a blessing so that we can gain stuff, but we should ask to be a blessing so we can bless other people. And God, was able to keep us in a place to where we were always able to give, that we were always able to share. And even though, COVID made it a little more difficult than normal, God was able to sustain us throughout this entire year. And I'm so grateful for that, because without God, where would we be? Honestly, where would any of us be without His kindness, His protection, His provision, His power, right? He's kept our minds, He's kept our hearts, and even when we were blind to the plan of God, right? Whenever we weren't quite sure how everything was going to turn out, God always provided, always made a way, and always gave us the encouragement that we need to keep pushing, to keep moving forward. And so for that, I am eternally grateful. And so this is really all I wanted to say today. Make sure that you focus on the good, right? Look at your life. Look at the areas where God has blessed you, the people that God has connected you with, right? And thank God for them today. Send them a text and say, hey, I just want to thank God for you being in my life. Um, you know, there is more good happening for you than bad, even though you may not be able to see it, even though you may not always be able to tangibly put your hands on it. God is good, and He will always be good. And, He's rooting for you. He has a plan for us, and we just have to stay humble, right? Understand that there's nothing in our lives that occurs without God blessing it, right? And so that's all I have for today, guys. Make sure that you follow this podcast, that you subscribe to this podcast everywhere where podcasts are available. And also go to podchaser.com. And if this episode, if this podcast is blessing you, make sure that you leave us a positive review and let us know how we are doing. All right. So until next time, be blessed. This is Pastor B. Y'all have a great day.